Welcome to another episode of the Sun Collectors podcast.
Number two.
Number two. First one was great. I think moving forward, we're going to do 20-minute segments for the time being, just so we can make the information a little bit more digestible for people so they're not sitting there listening to us ramble on for 45 minutes straight. But I think today, probably the best thing to talk about in our second episode is just how solar works, how the process works, how solar produces power, how your home uses it. And so you're in a lot of homes, a lot of consultations, Austin. So if I'm a business owner or a homeowner or a farm, what's the process look like from start to finish of going solar?
For sure. And so with that, there's obviously going to be a lot of steps. And the fortunate part is that I would say over the last 6 years that we've really been able to streamline said process. And that's really been able to differentiate us from, say, most other companies at this point. But from the analysis of how much power consumption a property is using all the way to actually sizing out the system and making sure the incentives line up, there are a few steps. And so, if you're a business owner or a homeowner and you call myself, the first thing is just going to be looking at your power consumption in the property itself. And so most of the time we're just breaking down your power bill and looking at the consumption that you've taken in, and then also just assessing if there's any future consumption that you might be implementing into the property as well. And so just getting a good understanding of what you're consuming. Then we go into step two, which is having a design created, which obviously it's always going to be unique and catered to each property. And so that's a really important part to express to people, that there's no cookie cutter way to do this. It's just making sure that we specifically allocate each system to meet the homeowner or business owner's needs. And I really do, take pride in the way that we do this, because there's a unique touch that we put onto everyone's system. And so there's an easy way to do it, and there's the right way to do it. And I will say that it might take us an extra day or two to do someone's system, just simply because of the way that we do our process. Then after that, again, sitting down with the homeowner or the business owner, the consultation itself, realistically an hour or so. It's very easy to go over it, but it's just making sure that the information is conveyed properly and that the questions are answered thoroughly. I cannot tell you how many times I've gone into someone's home after following up another company or two, and just the amount of facts that were left out was astounding. And so, very grateful for the opportunity to be in a position to inform people, but it seems like the internet does more of a disservice with the information or disinformation out there than it does in terms of helping. And so that's really something that I've learned to overcome, or making sure that people are informed about. But then again, after the consultation, that's something I'm very adamant about too, even before getting too deep into the weeds about anything, is just letting people know that there are things that disqualify people as well. And so before I ever even show up to someone's house, if we have a conversation over the phone or I look up your address and there's some major red flags or something that might not necessarily be a good fit, those are bridges that we might have to get over before we can even, recommend solar. And so that's always something that I would always dare say that it's not going to be a good fit for everyone.
And what are some of the biggest things that disqualify people from getting solar?
For sure. One of the, I would say, biggest things that is, there's a remedy to it, but I would say trees. And so if you're in a position to where you're not getting optimal sunlight throughout the year, trees or shading can be a pretty big issue. We want to make sure that you have good southern exposure. East to west is still fine as well. We typically try and stray away from any north facing, but any just optimal wide open location. Roof space, just making sure that there's enough roof space, but that's never really an issue, especially with the properties that we have here in the Midwest. Duration of the house, I would say, was more an issue prior on, but I think people, as they're realizing the longevity of solar and what it adds, I think that one's kind of come and gone by the wayside. The equity that it gains by owning your system and the way that we do it, I think that whether you're in your house for 2 years or 20 years, it's a no-brainer, especially with the way that legislation is working out with our state right now. To be completely honest, I would say one of the biggest things that will prohibit people from doing it is just them not ever looking into it. But more times than not, people, for as many people I have to disqualify, there's tons of people out there that have phenomenal homes for it that, I wish that they were able to see the information that we had to provide for them.
Absolutely. So I'm in the position of the consumer. I say, hey, Austin, I love everything. What do I do after that?
So the process in terms of getting everything rolling, I will say for the 20 to 30 minutes that I have to spend with someone to get it initiated, it couldn't really be easier from that point. There's a form that we get rolling for one of the state incentives, an installation agreement just to make sure that all the equipment's ready to go. But it's a couple forms. I leave everything with the homeowner to make sure that they can review it at their leisure. Obviously, if there's any further questions, I have no problem going back over and sitting down with them and making sure everything's completely kosher. But then from that point, I will say that our company does take the brunt of the heavy lifting. Our project management is insane in terms of just their communication abilities. I would dare say if you go through our reviews, that's probably one of the biggest things that you'll see quite frequently noticed or mentioned, is that or customers are never left in the dark. And I would say that that is one of our biggest, value points, is the fact that, we don't need to be someone's best friend, but they do need to feel as if though they're included with this project. And this is a very big thing that people are taking on. So after documentation's done, it's really more so just an idea of getting final proposal submitted. So we'll do a site survey where our team comes over, make sure that there's no red flags. If there's any extra hoops or hurdles that weren't initially discussed, we always are very upfront with the customers, making sure that any electrical work or meter upgrades, things of that nature, sometimes need to be done, but not always. But it's also just doing right by the customer. We're never going to do a half-done system that's never going to get approved by Ameren, and making sure that everything's done to code. And I do think that, again, customers are willing to play the long game or wait an extra week or two, making sure that it's done the right way as opposed to the quick way. Once the site survey is done, though, again, we'll submit a design for permitting. Obviously, there's a little bit of time involved with that, but once it's back in our hands, we're able to initiate the final installation. I would dare say that most of our installs are 1 to 2 day projects. It's not like we're up on people's roofs for 2 weeks banging and pounding, but 48 hours or less for most roof installs, and then even ground mounts are typically a day or two of trenching and then the actual install itself. But the whole process, and I would say from start to finish, 2 to 3 months, just depending on permitting and whatnot. But it's really nice to see where we've come over the last few years, just from the confidence that I'm able to instill, saying, hey, we do everything in-house now, and we do have complete oversight. But again, from start to finish, it starts with a couple forms if everything looks golden, and then, like I said, we kind of take care of the permitting, everything on the back end, and then as long as you're able to open the door for our electricians to get in, that's about all that we ask later on.
Absolutely. I'm going to touch on something that you said there. So, talking towards the beginning of the conversation, you were pointing at the fact that there's not a one size fits all solar system. And there are companies out there that do either just install cheap equipment and max out their roof space, and they just try to do this cookie cutter thing. And the reality of the situation is that does not work for people.
Right.
Everyone's electrical panel in their home is different. Everyone's capacity of that electrical panel is different. Beyond that, the roof structure, the how you're going to be able to run the conduit, what jurisdiction you're even in, and how the permitting is going to move through, and how quickly that's going to move through. What's your relationship with those AHJs or different permitting offices? All of those things play into what makes sense for the consumer, right? And everything we do is battery based as well. So you're also having to figure out what the consumption needs of that home are. Are they looking to back up their entire home for 2 or 3 days with the solar being connected to that battery, or are they just wanting enough to feed the power back to the grid at a better price point, right? So there's all these things that we have to go into the home and figure out from the consumer. And it comes down to questions like, what if the power goes out, what do you want to run, right? And go into the refrigerator and figure out how much power that consumes if that's something they're interested in. Go into the HVAC units and figure out that consumption, just to figure out how many hours we can run if the power is completely out with a full battery. Excuse me. Not only that, but also with how fast that battery can charge throughout different points of the year. So if you're in the middle of winter and we don't have a ton of power being produced by the solar panels and your power's out for a few days, that's a conversation you have to have with the consumer. And some of these people in the industry can go into a house and get someone signed up in 15 minutes. But that's why you're talking about an hour-long consultation. And we do truly treat it like a consultation.
Correct. And I do definitely think that that's really reframed or restructured, I would say, the projection of what our company does, and or I would say just the framework of our industry, and to do things properly. With the revolution of batteries becoming, I would say just a mainstay now with our installations, it really does go to show that, there are other companies that don't necessarily do this. And just the training that we went through, we had some of the most elite people in the nation kind of go through and teach our team. And for them to say, you guys are one of the few companies that have actually taken the time week after week to go through this, I don't know, it does really instill, again, a sense of confidence, but also just be wary as well that there are just, for the one company or two companies that are going to make sure they do it properly, there's unfortunately going to be a handful that don't have that information necessarily readily available. And I will say that, again, it is just a testament of doing it right and doing it light as opposed to doing it wrong and long. But it's worth it. And I do really love the idea that I guess we're restructuring more so it's not just about solar now. The idea is it is peace of mind is what we are giving to our homeowners at this point. And so that is I guess, again, a cool way that we're restructuring what our company's focus and projection is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And just breaking down solar in general as well. So essentially the idea is that the sun's energy, which scientific term would be called a photon, hits the solar panels. The panels take that energy in, and there's an inverter on the back of the panel, which essentially just makes it where your home can use that power. Mm-hmm. So what's happening is that power produced by each individual panel is getting sent to your home first, right? And any excess power that your home cannot use at that time gets sent to the battery to charge that up, right?
Correct.
And there's scenarios where you can't use any more in your house because it's all being used and the battery is full. So then that goes to the grid to offset your supply portion of your bill.
Mm.
And the idea with the batteries and is not only just a peace of mind if the power goes out, but also that energy stored in that battery is going to go to your home whenever your system is down at nighttime, cloudy days, rainy days, and then any excess is going to be drawn from the grid. So there's never a lack of power. You know, it's just like three pipes going in different ways, and it all ends up in the same place.
Mm.
And that's the beauty of the situation and technology nowadays. And you know, a cool aspect of it is everyone on their phone can look at what each individual panel is producing, how much capacity the battery has, what circuits you want to power. There's all these different, really unique and cool things that are happening nowadays that wasn't even in the industry when I started 6 years ago on the front end of it, but then 10 years ago in college. I mean, this stuff did not exist to this level. All the software development, everything else, super fascinating for people to be able to see and take ownership and control of their power. It's
100%.
amazing.
The apps that we have involved for homeowners, I mean, it's very cool to see how intuitive they are and just how in depth they go. I mean, the monitoring for just the inverters on the panels themselves, just having micro inverters lined up, which given that's the holiday season, the idea of Christmas lights always works well. The idea that, you know, if it's just that user compatible, if there's one panel that's not operating, you don't have to, you know, have rocket science to figure out that it's as simple as logging in. And I don't think it takes us more than a couple of days to make sure that we're out servicing someone. But the technology is to the point now where, I mean, the analytics is really cool just to see what the systems are doing. But then obviously, as you start incorporating the battery app, just to see the flow of power and actually how it's being administered and what the panels are doing versus what the battery is doing in the long run, I do think it's going to be quite cool to see, you know, over the next 5, 10, 15 years, what it does for our consumers.
I think it'd be interesting to talk as well about what people can do to either reduce the cost of their system or even increase the cost of the system, right? So we have people all the time that are like, well, what if I changed all my lights to LEDs? Nowadays, most people have LEDs anyway.
Right.
You know, some people get insulation. I mean, if you're going to go extreme with it, get new windows installed. There's all kinds of things you can do to reduce your consumption, even better appliances, right? But on the other end of that, you have people that want to do a heat pump, right? So you want to do more electrification. That way, you're never going to have to worry about rising gas prices.
Mm.
You know, there are several people throughout the years who have completely gone away from gas and turned everything into electric. That way, they can power their whole home. But besides heat pumps, I mean, there's a few people that install geothermal. There's electric cars,
Mm.
you know, additions to homes. All that stuff can be accounted for at the time of the proposal, right? So
Mm.
you don't have to wait and try to add on another system later because that just adds a whole different level of complexity to fixed fees and all this other stuff that happens with the incentives. But the idea is that we can really, really go in depth and get someone exactly what they want out of it. Because that's what we're here to do is give somebody what they need and want, opposed to just tell them what they need and want, right? So it's asking those questions, figuring out if there is going to be an electric vehicle, 2 hybrid vehicles, kids getting older, using more electronics. You're going to put a pool in, or are you going to put a hot tub in? It's all these things that make it sometimes a 3 hour conversation, depending on how in depth you want to go. But it's that level of detail and be able to answer those questions and have an honest conversation that speaks volumes about, you know, yourself as a representative, the company in general, and then all the other people that we employ to do this very hard, difficult job.
It is fun though. It's definitely fun. No, in terms of the breaking down what really, I mean, again, we'll go back to the cookie cutter reference that we made earlier. I will say that that's probably one of the most rewarding parts of this job. It is hard going into everyone's house and truly figuring out what each individual needs are. That part, it does get complex by all means, but the rewarding part is truly, I mean, through that organically, you do build relationships, and you know the systems that we install. Yes, that's a very minute part of, I guess, what we do, but I would say the larger part is definitely the relationships and what we develop with our community and what we have going on now. And it is cool because I think that, again, the hard way is not always going to be the easy way, but I think that we've truly developed out to the point now where it's just our standard at this point. And so, you know, moving forward, I don't think the industry is necessarily going to get easier to pay, but we're always going to make sure that we're here at the forefront of it. And I think that, you know, batteries are just, you know, one more milestone that we're getting over at this point. But, you know, as 2025 rolls through, it's just going to become another standard part. And it's new for a lot of people now, but, you know, in time, people are going to be stoked that they have them.
Absolutely.
Very happy to do it for them.
So we've talked about how solar works in general. We've talked about how our process looks. Let's talk about the future, right? So there's been a common misconception for years and years, and I know you've heard it 100 times, is that I'll just wait for the technology to get better,
Oh yeah,
right? It's and that's going to happen, right? The panels are going to get a little bit more efficient. The battery technology is going to get a little bit better, but that doesn't take away from the fact that you get these amazing incentives right now. You know, at the end of the day, you can get anywhere from 40 to 75% of your system covered on a residential level. And then you and I both have gotten farmers 100% of their system covered with subsidies. That doesn't mean you can't just get it for free. You have to come up with the cash first. But as those incentives roll in, you get that money back. It can quite literally become free or getting paid to go solar.
correct.
But yeah, so it's that misconception is very dangerous.
Yes, and I would dare say the amount of people that I have signed up. Well, not even dare say. I will say, I have never signed up anyone in my 4 years of doing this that has ever called me back regretting doing this. And so there's an old saying, when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. And so conceptually, the same thing I've learned. And at first I was skeptical about the industry because I just didn't necessarily know. But now that my customer basis has grown into the hundreds, I can confidently say that there's the best time to do this was always going to be for solar 5 years ago in our state when the incentives
Absolutely.
were at their absolute highest. And that's not to be discouraging by all means. This is more so just to be informative. The SREC funding was at a higher level with our state incentive. The tax credit was still at 30%. But the idea was that for more or less the same system, you could be getting more on the state level. It hasn't gone away to the point where it's absolutely not worth doing by all means. But I don't want one of the biggest misconceptions that I want people to know whenever I'm telling people at their house, if you were to wait another year or two, I don't want you to expect there to be more money magically here waiting for you. The funding is always on a first come, first served basis. And after each block opens up for the SREC program, it always decreases. And so it's just very important information to know that the early bird absolutely gets the worm in the solar industry. And with our state, the incentives were phenomenal when they first kicked off, almost to the point where, I mean, you're no stranger to this, where a lot of people thought it was almost too good to be true. When people think of Illinois and funding, the two damn things don't necessarily go hand in hand. So it was one of those things where skepticism wasn't, well or ill placed, but it was definitely one of those things for people that were willing to take the leap at the beginning. They got major rewards for it. Obviously, word of mouth spreads. There's a major domino effect with solar. So as neighbors start to get it and people start getting these fat checks from the state, now people's trust starts to fall a little bit more in place. And so now that the funding's been in place for 5 years now, it's obviously decreased. It's still there. As you said, people are still easily getting over 50 to 60% of their system subsidized. That's very commonplace, if not more, depending on what we can do for you. So the idea is that by all means, the opportunity is still there, but I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions that I've run into is that people think that if they hold out for more time that somehow the net cost is going to be lower because the incentives are going to increase, and it's quite literally the opposite.
It is.
Now, in terms of the future for technology, now to get away from the incentives real quick and be back on the technology aspect, the biggest thing that I've always learned, or from my independent research, I compare it to an iPhone, and it seems quite similar. In my 4 years of doing this, we've only sold tier 1 black on black panels. We've kept it simple, clean, but the right way, nothing more, nothing less, but it's just very efficient. There's no one panel on the market that blows any other panel out of the market, whether, there's Q-Cell, Silfabs, V-Sun, I mean, the list goes on and on. If you were to Google top 10 solar panels through 3 different websites, you're going to get the same, 9 to 10 manufacturers. The idea, though, is the warranties that you have backing it up and just the installation process itself. A good, clean install that's done properly will definitely outlast, a half-ass install, simply put. And so with that being said, I would say that the technology itself, it's really plateaued in the sense to where, panels are always going to be getting a little bit more efficient. But I think that there's another big misconception where homeowners are afraid of pulling the trigger now because they're afraid of some panel coming out next year that's just going to revolutionize our energy industry. And, I knock on wood, that would be phenomenal, but I don't think that that's going to, there's nothing showing that that's happening per se.
Absolutely, because they're not going to get 60% better, 50% better, especially if you miss out on the incentives. But there's a whole other aspect of this that I have a little bit more insight on, but it's the labor cost, inflation in general in the country right now. Our sales price was cheaper when we first started up than it is now. And it's not because I'm just trying to be greedy and get more money out of people. It's because labor cost is extremely more expensive now. Material cost is more expensive. Everything since COVID and supply chain issues is a big problem. Uh, but the labor is just getting more and more expensive. And the same thing when you're talking about your iPhone. The iPhones when they first came out were way cheaper than the $1,700, $1,500 iPhones you can buy today, right? They get more expensive as the technology gets better. So a couple of different things. If you were going to be installing solar and like, hey, I want to wait 6 years, wait for the technology to get better. Well, the incentives would drop down. The panels would probably be more expensive. All the supply costs would be increased. The labor costs would be increased. So you're talking about that net system cost that you were aiming for and seeking for to have the best, newest thing. Your net cost just went up by that much. And it's such a tragedy, especially if you can do 100% of your power offset, right? So if you can do 100% of your power every year with solar right now and get it subsidized, sounds like a good deal to me. But that fear of missing out in the future has always been, it's bothersome to me. But it's all about what you know and how you can portray it, and that's our job to do so. Um, and just talking about another thing too is the longevity of the system. So we have a 30-year warranty that we provide to every single customer, and it is backed by an insurance company. So even if something tragic happens to us, they will be backed by insurance companies. So a lot of companies rely on their labor, or not their labor, but the warranties of the panel or the product, right? So, and that doesn't necessarily cover labor, diagnostics, having someone that's going to be there to pick up the pieces. So really, they're just saying, hey, if it's broken and you can prove it's broken, we'll send you a new one.
Right.
And that's all you really get with that. And with us, it's parts, labor, diagnostics, every single thing about your system will be covered into the future through our insurance and our warranty process. And talking about our company, and we touched on this a little bit at the beginning, there will come a day where Sun Collectors does not exist because their solar incentives and selling solar will be damn near impossible. Either the market is going to be too saturated, the state shuts it down, or the power companies. But the idea with Oasis Electric, our sister company, is that we are going to be a service front electrical contracting company. That's all we're going to be really focused on, besides just doing random contracting here or there. Because there's so many stranded customers right there. There's so many people that need help with their system, and it's already happening. I mean, you're talking about an incentives program that's been out for 6 years, and there's this many people stranded. And the opportunities are endless for us to be able to help as many people as possible. Now, our customers are never going to have to worry about that cost, right? And we've had a couple situations like this on the install side where we'll go out and diagnose a project, and we tell the customer, hey, there's going to be a cost associated with this. Well, the company that sold it to me told me that it was a warranty, a 25-year warranty. Yeah, there is, but it's on the product. You still have to cover our labor costs. You still have to cover our diagnostics. It's time and material a lot of times too. There's not a set cost for a diagnostic of a system because we have to spend admin time getting into their app. We have to be able to call the different inverter manufacturers or whatever that may look like to get the problem figured out. And so it's really discouraging for them, and it even puts a worse taste in their mouth. When they're like, "Oh yeah, well, unfortunately, that $1,500 you need to pay to really get this project done." And we can put caps to it, say, "Hey, we're not going to go across this threshold or whatever." But it's really sad to see something like that. But I just want people to understand that our customers are taken care of for the future, the longevity of the system, even the batteries as well. Everything is just covered. We try to cover every one of our bases to make sure everyone has a positive experience throughout the years.
I do tell all of my customers, between our warranties, obviously homeowners insurance, between all the coverages that we have, our companies being locally based here, there is no other company that can provide the services that we do and or the amount of peace of mind that we provide on a project, simply put. And so again, the warranties, the equipment, all of that is nice and important, but I truly do believe at the end of the day, peace of mind is really the most valuable thing that we are providing to homeowners. And I think that we wrap that up very nicely into a package. And so I'm going to give credit to my wrestling coach in high school because I use this quote every time with every one of my customers, but I do think it encompasses what we do. You do it right, you do it light, you do it wrong, you do it long. And it's just, there's no add-ons, there's no pick and choose what you need. It's just, hey, this is the proper way to do this. There doesn't really need to be much more of a conversation about it. Just we have it dialed in. And I think that just goes to show, like, from our origins, being able to look at a nationwide company, the parts to reflect on, and how can we improve, and then starting Sun Collectors, and here we are.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's pretty much it for this episode. We'll have another one coming out next week, which I'm excited for. Getting towards Christmas, we can be a little bit more joyful and cheerful about some things.
The holiday season is here, so I'm looking forward to it. But
absolutely.
Right on.
Well, we'll see y'all next time.